Architectural Builder's Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
When you order doors, do you have to have, is that part of the door handle assembly? Is that where the actual bolt that goes in the dust-proof strike comes from?
So the question is about dust-proof strikes.
Yes.
What is the question about dust-proof strikes?
Okay, I have some doors that I've had put in, and then I just picked up the dust-proof strikes. And I understand they go in the floor and that keeps the debris out. I got all that. But where's the actual pin that goes in? Is that attached to part of the door hardware? Because we just have regular right-angle door handles. I'm wondering where the pin comes from. Does that have to be purchased extra?
Well, a dust-proof strike is the hardware that mounts in the floor that allows you to retain the bolt from a flush bolt. The flush bolt would be mortised generally into the edge of the door and is indeed a separate piece of hardware that would be a line item in the hardware set. Usually not, well, never really in the commercial world included inherently in the inactive leaf of a commercial door, although in residential doors it can be commonly included in the door.
Very well said. Excellent. That made sense. So in a commercial door, generally that's something that's purchased extra to have the bolt that actually goes down through the floor. Is that normally attached to the type of opening, which is the lever that goes across the door and you push it and that goes down? Or is it a manual, you push it down manually with your hand and it goes into the floor?
Yeah, it's almost never incorporated into the trim, but there are multi-point locks where that is possible. But generally, it's going to be a separate piece of hardware that is just installed in the edge of the door, and it has its own point of activation where you touch it, you move it, the bolt drops, or the bolt comes back up. Is what that is.
Yeah, because again, I've had some installers put some doors that they weren't that good of installers, and I picked up extra hardware that didn't come in, and of course one of them is the strike, and I'm going, well, where does the pin come from? I can't, in my mind on these doors, unless I just haven't looked at them close enough, seen a pin that would come down and go in the strike. I'm going, where's the pin? And maybe I've overlooked it, but I'm not seeing the pin. I have the strikes, but I'm going, well, unless the door was ordered with the pins, is that a bolt-on, the actual bolt? Does it bolt it onto the door, or is it incorporated in the door itself, in a commercial metal door?
It's something installed into the door as a separate piece of hardware, just like you would install a door closer. It's just a piece that has to get installed onto the door.
Okay.
Now where to find it is super easy. It's going to be, if it exists, it's going to be in the very edge of the inactive door, and it'll be near the bottom of the door. It'll be quite obvious. If your door has hardware there, it'll either have the hardware installed or there'll be a preparation only for it. And if your door has no preparation whatsoever, that's problematic in the sense that you have no need for a dust-proof strike if you don't have a flush bolt preparation on the door.
Okay. And again, we just had some urethane, like $30,000 worth of urethane put on the floor. And I'm thinking, well, I don't really know we actually want these strikes because there's going to be a lot of traffic going in and out of these doors. I really think it's probably overkill. And I just picked up the door sweeps from the door people that I bought here in Asheville. And, I got the strikes and I'm going, well, where's the bolt? So unless it's mounted in it, it's going to be either extra hardware that wasn't installed or it will be in the door and I'll be able to see it if I look at the outer trailing edge of the door towards the bottom.
Yes, sir. Now, that's well said.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that for me because I've been all over the internet. I've even been to the manufacturer, their tail doors. I called the company I ordered them from. They're already checked out because it's 4 o'clock, and I'm going, am I missing something here? Where's this striker coming from? Because I figured it would come together as a hardware kit, like here are your strikers and here are your bolts. And I'm not seeing the bolts. So now I need to go back and look at that option. But So other than that, then if you don't use those, I guess can you still use one in the header of the door if you didn't want to put one on the floor? Do they make one that's designed for the top also? I know in wooden doors they do, it just slides up like a nail. But in a commercial metal door, I'm not sure, how you'd go into the top of the door frame, or if you could.
Well, I mean, the answer to the question is yes. And it's not unlike what you've seen in residential doors. And it's very common to not install one at the bottom of the door for the reason that you just said. Hospitals don't want holes in floors. They don't install those.
Right.
A home that has flooring running in the floor, the wires for radiant flooring heat.
Yes.
Is what I meant to say. Yeah, you're not drilling holes into that. So
right.
The upside
it's optional. Yeah.
It's optional in the sense that, well, you sure don't have to put one. It does, of course, substantially reduce the security over the opening.
Right. Yeah, these are going to be high traffic doors, people carrying products in and out and so forth. Well, I appreciate you answering my questions. Really, you taking your time. I mean, you just don't know. You really clarified a lot. That's awesome. I found you guys on the website. I started off, just kind of searching and not sure how I landed here, but it looks like you guys have a lot of stuff also.
Yeah, we do. We're 5 generations of my family to sell hardware, and I'm glad you called. Is all I can say about that.
Well, I will definitely keep checking your site out, because I do building maintenance for a company here in Asheville, and they're popping at the seams. They have about $3 million worth of orders they can't fill, and it's gone viral. And we're in an 18,000 square foot warehouse, so we're turning what used to be a sales room that people sit in there before Amazon and sold products. Amazon wiped that out. Then they went from people buying salt from people answering the phone into everything being wholesale. So it's amazing, but anyway, it's, I guess what a dilemma. It's better to have too much than to have not enough.
We have millions of dollars of inventory, commercial hardware related. There must be something we can help with at some point.
Do you also sell metal doors too? Can I order metal door? I see it right there. There you are. I'm looking at it. Okay.
Metal doors are my legal middle name. That happens to be an area of expertise of mine personally.
Okay, because I'm running into issues. We're GMP. We're not SQF, but we're GMP, good manufacturing practices, because we're a food company, and I have some doors right now that for some reason they put weep holes in the top of the door and the bottom of the door. But when it rains, it seems to me that it's caused the bottom corner of the doors to rust out in this commercial metal building. I have one door I've already replaced. I have 2 more. When you walk up to the door and look down at the corner where the striker is, the corners are rusting out. And I climbed up and looked, and all I can figure is they have a hole in them, and I don't really understand why they would have like a quarter hole at the top and a hole at the bottom. It's kind of strange, but.
Well, you're right. It's absolutely a weep hole, and it is intended to prevent the pooling of water, because water is going to get in. It's going to, because that top channel is just spot welded.
Right.
Now, what happens is it is specified that a sealed top cap will be put in. A manufacturer can supply a fastened top cap and then seal that off as well. So you might want to look into.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I never knew that. Never knew that at all. Wow.
And it would be something that if you've got an issue on exterior doors. So what you really want to do to solve that? So are they indeed exterior doors? They're
indeed exterior commercial metal doors. Yes.
So what I would suggest that you do is, rather than spend too much time on the fact that there are weep holes, I would install drip caps. And a drip cap is a curved piece of aluminum that installs on the face of the header. And its sole purpose is when rainwater comes down the face of the wall, it hits that drip cap. It's curved downwards. It has a 2.5-inch projection, and it prevents the water from hitting the wall, hitting the face of the header. And then as soon as it travels that 2-inch down the face of the header, what does it like to do? Curl back in, get to the top of the door, and then down it goes through the door, destroying the bond between the core and the inside face of the steel. Add some drip caps, and it is light out. Problem solved. And I'm not saying that as much of a salesman as a fact that I remember 25 years ago when I witnessed the water problem, and then we put drip caps for the client and came back after a bad rain, not a drop. Not a drop.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
It was the best $30 or whatever you'll ever spend.
No doubt. Yeah, never knew they made such a thing. Never knew there was a drip cap for a metal door. Yeah, that would have fixed that whole problem. I could see that.
You could just search that in my site, drip cap, or just send me an email and I'll send you back a link to it.
Okay. Can I ask you one other question?
Yeah.
So if you have commercial double metal doors, and you know how you mentioned that a door has it almost has like a fascia, like you have a frame, and then on the front there's an 1/8 inch piece thick of steel, like a fascia, that's just way. So on double metal doors, if these doors are universal doors, should that metal be the same? Like when you look at the doors and you open them up, should that skin, what I want to call an outer door skin, be on the same side, or will one be inside and one will be outside? Because these doors, the people who put these doors up, I don't think they knew what they were doing. In fact, it was family. I advised them not to go with them, and they did. But I have some that's out of plumb. I doubt if they're going to come back and fix it. I mean, I don't know. I do all the building maintenance, but they started bringing in some family to put these doors in. I'm going, not everybody does doors. I go, the reason I'm not installing them is because I don't do doors. I do car doors. I don't hang commercial doors or wooden doors, because not everybody can shim out a door correctly. But
lots of people can do it. Just not a lot of people can do it well. So depending, and I don't know that I'm part of the group that does it well, because it's, people make a living doing it.
Sure.
The answer is it depends on the construction of the door. There are different types of classifications for how doors are actually built. And sometimes that steel hems over to the inside face. Other times you don't see it. It depends on who the manufacturer is and how they take the two pans, the two pieces of steel, and basically bring them into being one complete unit. So it sounds like you've got you've got the door face. It turns around the 90, well, it's not probably 90 degree, it's probably 87 degree or 93 degree, depending on what face. And then it interlocks. It has a rolled over edge that interlocks the other pan, which is the opposite door face skin. And most of the time those are just mechanically interlocked. And it's absolutely considered a commodity door, that sort of construction.
But should the panel, like if you look at it from the side, you can tell it's like a frame with then that front panel. It's it's just a solid steel panel. Should they both be facing the same way on metal door? I mean, if it's a double door, would they be consistent, or does that just totally irrelevant?
I'm not. I would like to see a photograph of what you're describing, so I make sure that I understand.
Right. I just, when you look at the sides of a door, like I can see what looks like if you use a car, like you have the frame and you have the skin. Well, when I look at a metal door from the side, I see a frame, and then I see what I call the skin, which is like an 1/8 inch thick piece of metal that looks like it's, welded or tacked or however it's put together. And so I can tell that, you have a front side of the door and a back side of the door. And I'm just wondering, in commercial double doors, should that be consistent? So would they keep that line going both ways?
It would be on the same elevation of the pairs of the doors. So if you had a typical pair of doors, that line would be on would be on the same elevation or the same face of the doors. If you had double egress doors like you see in hospitals, they're generally opposite, but you probably wouldn't see that at all in a hospital application, because those edges would be welded and otherwise treated. Right.
Well, and what kind of brings me up to that question is when I look over to the right side of the door and I see where the hinges are mounted, they're like almost flush with the door. I look over to the other side on the right side of the door, and it looks like there's a shim that goes there, but the shims they send with them, it looks like to me they're only designed to go on the inside, because you have a little shim plate, then it has like a little bitty ledge,
right.
Which is designed.
That shim is sent with doors, because what you can do is you always use that shim when you have what we call standard weight hinges, meaning if the hinge is 4.5 inch tall, the thickness of the leaf will be 0.134 inch. Well, you can also install heavyweight hinges, and on a 4.5-inch tall hinge, that leaf thickness is going to be 180 thousandths. So the way that you compensate for that is by removing that shim plate that's there. So it would make sense that they're there, absolutely.
Okay, so if there was a shim plate in there, that could be what's causing me to have a gap. Because when the doors are closed and I look at the hinges, all you see is like the barrel of the hinges. One side, the hinges bolt up right to the door. It looks really good. I go to the other side, and it looks like there's a gap. I'm going, well, why do we have a gap on this one side?
So generally you're going to have a really huge gap involved when you have stock 3-foot doors and a stock 6-foot frame. And what that means is stock 3-foot doors are 35 3/4. And that stock 6-foot frame is going to be 72 inch. Well, 35 3/4 times 2 is 71.5. And if you have 1/8 of an inch on the hinge side, on the left hinge side, 1/8 on the other, that leaves you with a 1/4 inch gap between the doors, and that's too much. So if you close down the gap between the two doors to 1/8 of an inch, that means one side or both sides are heavier than they should be, meaning wider than they should be.
Wow. That's interesting. All right. Well, you've answered every question I have and then some. I never knew. Man, you talk about details on doors. Wow.
Legal middle name. When I was a 20-year-old, I've been doing it. I've been doing this for over 3 decades, and when I was like 21, I just fell in love with the pursuit of learning hollow metal doors, how they're manufactured. It is and remains very fascinating to me. We're talking ancient technology, but steel doors are pound for pound the best way to go. Recyclable material, relatively inexpensive, extremely durable. You want it pink? Great. Paint it pink. Don't care. You can have any color you want, and they're just really great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate all the info. I'm definitely going to mark your website here, and going forward, I'll try to order some stuff from you guys for sure.
I look forward to earning that, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. I want to show you this gap beside this hinge that's kind of throwing me for a loop.
I'd love to see. That.
Send it to tech@abssupply.net or sales or where would I?
Tech will get straight to me.
Tech will go straight to you. Okay, I'm just going to shoot it to you right quick here. I still feel like there's something wrong, and that's why I was asking you about, was there a front and a back to the door if they actually had a face? Because I'm trying to figure out why one side has a gap and one doesn't. And here, let me do this right here. Hinge gap. Oh, okay. It should be hitting there in just a minute.
Oh, yeah, I won't see it till later. I'm in the shop up a ladder, literally, with zip ties.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No,
all right.
okay.
Well, if you just know when you get a chance to look at it, just tell me, I'm trying to figure out like I said, one side of the door, this is with the door closed and you're just staring at the cylinder part of the hinge is sticking out. One side, the metal door snugs all the way up to the hinge and it looks like it should. The right side, there's a gap. Like there's either a plate that shouldn't be there or the door could be reversed. That's why I was, kind of wondering if you have double doors, do they have two faces that point the same direction and two fronts and two rears, or is that irrelevant with, since it's a right-hand and left-hand door?
It does sound like you're describing a pair of doors where one of the two doors is literally hung backwards or upside down, meaning the bevel is reversed. And I've had customers call me and say, the door doesn't close, it springs open. And there's a huge gap as well, they say. And then I ask them a couple of questions, or one question, and I immediately realize they hung it backwards. They literally, because some doors, the hinges are equidistant from either end, so you can end up doing that unintentionally.
Okay. Well, tomorrow when I go in, I may shoot some pictures of the sides of the doors because I have these two guys are coming back to finish up the doors and put the rest of the hardware on. And from the very beginning, I've told them they're not right. Your doors are out of plumb. One hinge, it's not preloaded, but it's when you shut it, it springs open. It's not really sprung. I think they prefer that as a preload, where you shut the door and it bounces open. And I don't think they're going to fix it. And the more I can go, look, this goes here, this is wrong, this is backwards, because they're young. And again, I got caught up in this family thing, where they wanted these people to install the doors. And so now I'm kind of going, you did a crappy job, and they don't want to hear that. They're coming down on me, and I'm going, well, I grew up doing construction. My dad's a construction superintendent. He built Holiday Inns and Hampton Inns, and I did it till I was like 23, and I went, I've had enough, and I started doing painting cars and getting into cars and doing other things. But that's because I know doors are, to do them right, you need somebody like you installing them. I mean, somebody that, understands and knows the ins and outs. They literally used an impact gun on all the screws, and they messed up the threads. And I'm like, I used to work in a machine shop, and I'm going, how stupid can you get? I mean, you don't use an impact gun on a Phillips screw and sit there and hammer it in. Plus, I wouldn't even want to start a screw in a metal door with an impact gun for the sheer fact it's like a lug nut. If you start it in wrong and you run on in, you've killed your threads. So I've got all these complaints, but I really feel like either the doors are backwards or there's something that's not right about this install of these doors.
Well, the published documentation from the industry is going to tell you must always clear out the paint by using a tap and do it by hand. Because when the components go through the paint line, they're hung. Paint is sprayed everywhere on door and frame components, including the threads. If you're not clearing it out, the chance of stripping something, a screw, cross-threading it, is real. Now, what's nice is hinge screws are also called thread forming. They've got a little notch cut in them to help compensate for the typical Chicago moron like me who's going to do it wrong the first 20 times and be stupid enough to say, maybe I should actually look at the instructions. So I would very much encourage you send me photographs because, I'm not out to point any errors, but doors are my chosen profession.
Yeah,
I do enjoy.
Well, I mean, you just don't know, because I would really, I have a feeling that these doors are going to come back and haunt her, and that's what I kept trying to tell the owner. But because I said I've been in their building, I've done building maintenance for this company for a long time. It's a family-owned business, and I said, just have them put one door in. If you don't like it, we can at least say, no, we don't want you to keep going. They did all 3 doors in a weekend, charged her $1,500 a door. First thing I do is I walk in and they spring open, and I'm going, and then I suggested they use a plumb bob, and the guy emails me back and go, it's the same as a level. And,
if a plumb bob works horizontally, I would agree, but they generally work better vertically.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, for when it comes to salt.
Oh, I don't deny my body when it's looking for salt. That's for sure.
Yep. But you're Richard, correct? That's when you answered. That's what I failed to ask you that a minute ago, but I want to write that down. So, but I did shoot you an email, and at your convenience, if you could look at it, and I'd love to tomorrow when I go there. I'm just going to kind of show you what I'm working with. Maybe you can give me some insight, because I've already gone from the manufacturer that we got them from, and the guy just said, "Oh, you need these hinge plates," and boom, and here you go. And I'm thinking, well, you didn't even look. I sent him a picture, and he didn't even contemplate, could the door be backwards? Are they, So, and that's the way the world seems to be going. Nobody really is detail oriented anymore. I mean, it doesn't seem like to me.
It gets busy just selling. It gets boring just selling hinges. So something for the brain to actually chew on is.
I'm with you.
To work on.
Yes, me too. Totally. Well, Richard, thanks for your help. I won't bother you anymore, and I will shoot you some pictures tomorrow.
Call anytime. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So,
did you have a chance to look at that email? How that hinge had that gap in it?
Yeah, it's just missing the what they would call the reversing plate or the hinge plate or the hinge shim. It's missing that.
Go ahead.
It's just missing that piece of hardware.
Well, now, the guy sent a box of shims, but they all have a bend on the end of them that look like it's made for just the end on the hinge side, because the end on the hinge side has like there's a break on the end. it has a, you know, sharp break and fits the contour of the door. But the other plates that they sent all have that same kind of bend on it. I didn't see, it didn't look like to me it would go in that slot and be able to just fit in there and fill that gap.
Yeah, so the hemmed over part is going to be the side of the door opposite the knuckle, but the shim should come all the way through the door and fill that space. So the hinge would sit on the shim that we're talking about, and it would fill that space. You would not have that unusual gap that's there.
Yes.
Unless they took several thick shims that are not the door plate shims, because they needed to pad the door over, move it over. That would end up leaving a large gap like that.
If they had to shim it up and stick shim in it.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, because the shims that he sent me, if I put them in there, they all have that that break on the end of them to where they wouldn't fit all the way through, because most of the shims, you know, they're a short shim. They're not a real wide shim. You know, they're like maybe an inch,
Yeah, there are, the shims are, they could be. There are shims that are slotted so that you could loosen the screws and then slide it in from the backside all the way to the point where it stops, and that would serve to fill it as well. Hager has a shim like that.
Okay.
Really, what you'd want to do is remove that hinge leaf and see what's going on underneath that hinge plate.
Right. Well, I have, the installers I don't really think they knew what they were doing. I think that's a big part of it. But, so I'm now having to learn to build my ammunition to go, hey, these aren't right. That you shouldn't have this gap on one side, and in one side it looked normal, and, gap being on others, something out of kilter there somewhere.
Right.
I mean, it's not bad. It's just my thing is they were paid good money to put these doors in, and they're something is definitely off there, kind of. So.
Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't be able to see that much, and some caulk on a finger is not the right way to fix that.
No, that should be a shim plate or something in there to fill the gap.
Right.
Yep. Well, I sure appreciate it. I was going to send you more pictures yesterday, but I sent an email from my computer, and I was on my phone, and I was out there yesterday, and I kept looking, going, I would have sent him a picture of these doors, because I had the question of, should the doors have, that lip, how one face of the door is actually, like a skin, its actual face, like mounted on a frame. And, my question is should one go to the inside and one go to the outside, or should they both be facing the same direction on the doors?
Yeah, I recall that. It sounds like they should be both going in the same direction. And I've sent you an email. Reply with additional photos, and I'm happy to look at it. Okay.
That would be great, because now that I have your number, I might have to, I'm trying to remember your URL again, because that was another thing, is I don't, just being on my phone, I sit in front of my computer, I have everything at my fingertips, but I get on my phone and I'm like, well, that's not going to be in that history, and, that's missing. And
yeah. Well, I've just sent you my email, so in my
okay,
domain
you sent me one. Great.
Yes, sir.
Super, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you calling me. That's awesome. Yep.
Yes, sir.
You have a good day. Thank you again.
You too.
Bye. Mitered into the, side of the door, and it looks like it's a brass fixture, but the pin keeps dropping back inside of the door. And I'm wondering, is that door? Something? It's on a wood door, and I can pull this piece out. I can pull it out and get dimensions when I get there. But it's just the locking bolt. It goes up into it's going into a metal, I think it's wood. It's just a wooden header. I can't remember if this is metal or wood. I think it's a wooden header this is going into. Sure. But it's just a push pin. It's just a bolt that's, cut into the door that when, it's to slide your bolt up to lock it.
Yeah, so that's a flush bolt. And those bolts the bolt heads will slide, or they'll come loose if the top plate isn't installed because the bolt should be in the shape of the letter D, capital letter D, and that prevents rotation. Unless it's a really old flush bolt, then those bolt heads were just round. But you need the top plate to keep it from rotating. I'd like to see a picture of the side of that and then the top of the door, and I'll let you know what you need for that as well.
Okay, good deal. That'd be great. Yeah, because I pulled it off and repaired it about a month ago, you know, and it looked like it would stay to me, but for some reason the bolt keeps coming loose out of its clip and dropping back down into the door. I mean, we have a lot more people working there, and it just seems like they're roughhousing everything because the demand on our product went up, and so did the amount of people that are in there, and, you know, it's just a lot more traffic everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you need a picture of the top and the side.
Absolutely.
Okay. And do you want a picture of me pulling it out so you can see, you know, like what the whole thing looks like, or can you match it up with the top and the side?
I wouldn't go to the trouble of removing it from the door just yet.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I appreciate that. I will be back in touch with you on that also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Okay, the conversation that follows is quite wide-ranging, in fact, about hollow metal doors, etc. And at the very end of the conversations, we're going to kind of talk about what the client likely has and what I would suggest that he does. I've not been able to get a hold of him or hear back from him in terms of how it was resolved. So at the end of the video, I'll just kind of guess as to how it was probably resolved. So let's do that now. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so there's quite a lot there to unpack, but there's some valuable information in there. Likely what's happened is the installers could be quite good. They may have made just a couple of omissions of something, or just very possibly dealing with what they had in their truck at that moment. But let's take a look at the photograph and decide how this problem could have been talked about, and I will also talk about a couple of the other concerns that the client shed light on, but I was unable to fully understand what they were referring to, so we'll do that now. We'll wrap it up. Let's do it. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Also, there was something else that was being referred to, and what has happened to me in the past is I've had customers call me and say, every time I push the door closed, it springs back open. And on a bevel door, this is how the bevel needs to look. So, in this instance where the client calls and says the door springs back open, and it's really hard to get the screws tightened on the hinges, it's because on a 6'8" door, the dimension from the top of the door to the top of the first hinge, and the top of the door to the second, top to third, is the same as bottom to top, bottom to bottom, bottom to bottom, and bottom to bottom. And the lock is equidistant. It's equidistant from either end. In the case that it's happened to me in the past, it was a 7-foot door that the relationship of the hinge locations from top or bottom is the same as 6'8", and there was no lock prep because it was an exit device. So what the client did was, he installed the door because the hinges were equidistant. He installed the door like this, with the bevel going the wrong way. And he's trying to fight to get the hinges installed, and couldn't because the bevel was fighting against him. And he got it tightened. He was determined. And every time he'd push that door closed, well, it'd come right back open because this is making contact and the hinges aren't attached, etc. He had installed his exit device, the whole 9 yards. Actually, no, I don't think he got to the exit device part. He called me, a good client of mine, and the job site was about 10 minutes from the office. And I had to take a ride anyway, and I said, stay right there, I'm heading over. And as soon as I walked up, what I saw was the enormous gap here, and I knew that it was a beveled door. I saw that enormous gap, and I told him, you've got the door hung upside down, basically. Not basically, upside down. And he looked at me and says, how's that possible? I explained why. You know, it's an honest mistake. The hinges are at the same location from either end. And as soon as I showed him the bevel, he slapped me on the back and, you know, shook my hand with much vigorosity and was deeply appreciative of me. Anyway, so that could be what was happening, but I don't think so. All right, let's move on. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Well, this is the image that you've seen. Now, why would that be the case? Well, it's hard to say what's happening here because we can't see the gap. But very likely what happens when this is going on is what the client's done is he's taken a typical shim, not unlike this, which lots of people make shims. Lots and lots of people. The Hager one, I know that I have a nice table here for shims, and I will show you what they look like. So Hager has their 337 A, B, A and B. Okay, that's what they've got. So the 337A and B, 0.028 thickness, so basically a 32nd of an inch, and then 0.065, so basically a 16th of an inch. If you had a really excessive gap on the lock side of the door, you could put shims, I'm assuming this is the door, you could put shims underneath here that are going to look just like this shim, and you're not going to be able to identify the fact that there's a shim underneath there. Now, what really should have happened was, sizes, and that's what the shim looks like. Different sizes as well. This is for a 4.5 inch hinge. Okay, just a video of the shim, doesn't really matter. Thick, which is so if you were to take one or two of those, or whatever, and stack them underneath, it's going to look like this. Now what the client really ought to have been using, the installer I should say, is this type of handed shim. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. We stock those sorry. And this type of shim here contends with a non-handed door where the prep is cut all the way through. Well, that's no good because a regular hinge is going to have a 1/4 inch back set. But this hemmed over end here is what closes off the one end so that you're not seeing. And what that hemmed over part does is it closes this off. Now, there must be a shim underneath here because otherwise that hinge would be sucked up tight to the edge of the door, so there has to be shims in there. But what I would have done is I would have left the proper handing shim in there and then placed the necessary shims in order to move the door in the direction that it needed to get moved into, is what I would be doing. Now, what I'd like to bring to your attention is some irreplaceable industry resources under the Steel Door Institute. and it's steeldoor.org. And so under standards, technical data series, ANSI documents, installation, steel door and frame installation. So obviously there are videos here. But what's really helpful is they have manuals. So this is literally the governing document when it comes to installing steel doors. You know, they're showing us the shim that we're referring to, and this is a great picture because it does show you how it closes off that gap. But elsewhere on the website, and they've, unfortunately for me, they continue to change. Well, they've changed the layout a little bit. And recommended details for steel doors, frames, and related components. Manufacturing tolerances. Basic requirements. Installation troubleshooting guide for standard steel doors and frames. Standard in PDF. And this is the document. This is the year of publication. This is the SDI document, and that's the year of publication. So I think the first time I saw this, that number was somewhere in the 80s, I think. So this is it. And when you get this document open, if you just do a Control F or a find function for shim, there's 108 matches of that term. So this document is not only one that is really helpful to have available to you, and if the client who called a number of times invested time into reading this, they would have been able to know exactly what was happening. But this right here tells us increased gap. When you've added that shim, you're bumping that gap out. And that gap right there is literally what we're seeing right here. And it's addressed in this industry standard. This is the governing document. So this is the measuring tape that we've all agreed to use. At least I think we all have. And extremely helpful. So the installers should have this. The gentleman who's concerned about getting a quality job should be pulling this out of their briefcase and saying, but according to SDI 122-21, etc., that sort of business. Anyway, thank you very much, and if you have any questions on shimming a door, etc., please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.